Before I tell you the word, I need you to hear me all the way through. Not because I want to scare you, not because I want attention, but because what I'm about to say comes from a place I never thought I'd escape. I'm speaking as someone who once knew the darkness intimately, who whispered words at night believing they held power, who understood how the spiritual realm responds when certain names are spoken before sleep. And I need you to understand this. Nighttime is not neutral. When your body rests, your spirit is still very awake. I remember the nights when silence felt heavy, when darkness wasn't just the absence of light, but a presence. I used to prepare for sleep very differently than most people. There were rituals, intentions, words spoken softly under my breath. We were taught that the last word spoken before sleep seals the night. It invites, it permits, it authorizes. That's why witches, occultists, and spiritual practitioners are very careful about what they say before closing their eyes. Sleep is a doorway. Dreams are not random. And the spirit realm listens when the world goes quiet. I didn't always know I was being watched. At first, it felt empowering. Saying a word before sleep that made me feel protected, elevated, chosen. But protection that comes from darkness always demands a price. I started noticing patterns, nightmares that felt more real than my waking life. Waking up tired, heavy, anxious, even after long sleep. My thoughts weren't my own anymore. I would wake up already afraid, already angry, already empty. And I thought this was normal. I thought this was power. One night changed everything. I had done what I always did. The room was quiet. The lights were off. My body was tired, but my mind was racing. And as I lay there, I felt something shift. Not peace, not rest, pressure, like the air thickened, like something was waiting for permission. And I realized in that moment, words spoken before sleep are not harmless. They are invitations. I didn't know how to undo what I had done for years. I didn't know how to shut doors I had opened intentionally. Fear gripped me because for the first time I understood that darkness doesn't knock. It enters when welcomed. That night, for the first time, I didn't say the words I had been trained to say. I didn't perform. I didn't chant. I didn't call on anything I used to trust. I lay there, frozen, unsure, exposed. And in that silence, something unexpected happened. A name surfaced in my mind, a name I had avoided, a name we were warned never to speak casually, a name that carried authority we couldn't manipulate. I resisted it at first, because saying that name meant surrender. It meant admitting I was wrong. It meant acknowledging that everything I thought was power was actually bondage. But the fear in that moment was greater than my pride. So quietly, almost trembling, I whispered that one word, Jesus. I didn't say a prayer. I didn't explain myself. I didn't bargain. I just said the name, and something broke. I can't fully describe it in human language, but the atmosphere changed instantly. The pressure lifted, the heaviness dissolved. My body relaxed in a way it hadn't in years. For the first time in so long, sleep didn't feel like falling into darkness. It felt like being covered. That night I slept. Not ritual sleep, not restless sleep, real rest. When I woke up, I noticed something strange. The fear that usually greeted me in the morning wasn't there. The heaviness was gone. My thoughts were quieter, and I knew I had touched something real. Not borrowed power, not deceptive peace, but authority. That's when I began to understand why the enemy hates that name spoken before sleep. Because when you say it, you're not inviting darkness, you're declaring ownership. You're saying, I don't belong to fear, I don't belong to torment, I belong to Him. But here's what most people don't realize. Saying the name once is powerful, but saying it consistently rewires the night. It retrains your spirit. It shuts doors you didn't even know were open. I began testing it, night after night. No rituals, no candles, no intentions. Just that one word before closing my eyes. Jesus. The nightmares stopped. The sleep paralysis ended. The anxiety attacks disappeared. Even my dreams changed. Where there used to be chaos, there was clarity. Where there used to be shadows, there was light. And that scared the darkness. Because when you speak that name before sleep, you are declaring lordship over your unconscious mind. You are placing your most vulnerable state under divine authority. And nothing unclean can remain where His name is honored. I need you to hear this clearly. If you've been struggling with restless sleep, recurring nightmares, unexplained fear at night, heaviness when you wake up, or a sense that something is draining you while you sleep, this is not random. Nighttime is a battlefield, and silence is not protection. In the occult, we knew this. That's why words mattered. That's why names mattered. That's why sleep was guarded carefully. So when I tell you to say this one word before sleep, I'm not giving you superstition. I'm giving you a spiritual weapon I once tried to avoid. Before you even try this, I need to prepare you for something most people aren't told. When you begin to reclaim the night, when you start placing your sleep under the authority of Jesus, resistance doesn't always show up as chaos. Sometimes it shows up as discomfort, restlessness, strange thoughts, a sudden urge to stop. That doesn't mean it isn't working. It often means something is losing access. I remember the first few nights after that breakthrough. I expected everything to be instantly perfect, peaceful, effortless. But instead, there were moments where my body felt unsettled. My mind tried to wander back to old patterns. Old fears tried to resurface. And I realized something important. Darkness doesn't always leave without exposing itself first. In the occult, we were taught that when a door is closing, whatever entered through it will try to resist being shut out. That's why so many people give up too soon. They mistake resistance for failure. But resistance is often confirmation. When you say the name of Jesus before sleep, you are not just speaking a word. You are making a declaration in a realm you cannot see. You are saying, "This night does not belong to fear. This mind does not belong to torment. This body does not belong to oppression." And the spirit realm responds to authority, not volume. Let me explain something very carefully. Nighttime is when the subconscious mind is most open. That's why trauma resurfaces in dreams. That's why old memories replay at night. That's why anxiety gets louder when the lights go off. Your conscious defenses are down, and whatever has legal access uses that time to reinforce its influence. That's why when I was deep in darkness, the final word before sleep mattered so much. We believed it sealed the night. It set the tone. It determined who had access. So, when you speak the name of Jesus before sleep, you are revoking permissions you may not even remember granting. This is why some people feel emotional when they do it. Tears come unexpectedly. The chest tightens. The throat feels heavy. That's not weakness. That's release. That's something loosening its grip. I remember one night in particular, early in this journey, I whispered his name like I had been doing, turned to my side and closed my eyes. And suddenly, memories I hadn't thought about in years surfaced. Shame, regret, moments I wished I could erase. At first, panic rose up. I thought something was wrong. But then I understood. Light exposes what darkness buried. Not to shame you, but to heal you. For years, the night had been used against me. It was the time fear spoke loudest, the time guilt replayed itself. But now the night was becoming a place of restoration. And here's something else most people don't know. Saying the name of Jesus before sleep doesn't just affect your dreams, it affects your waking life. Because when your spirit rests under His covering, you wake up aligned. You wake up clearer. You wake up stronger. I started noticing changes during the day. My reactions shifted. Things that used to trigger me didn't have the same power. My thoughts were steadier. My emotions were no longer swinging wildly. It was like something was quietly rebuilding me from the inside out, starting at night. That's because spiritual authority doesn't clock out when you sleep. The enemy knows this. That's why sleep deprivation is such a common attack. That's why anxiety spikes at night. That's why so many people dread going to bed, because a tired mind is easier to influence. A restless spirit is easier to manipulate. But when you consistently say his name before sleep, you are declaring trust. You are surrendering control. And surrender terrifies darkness because it can no longer negotiate with you. Now listen to me carefully. This isn't a magic trick. This isn't a chant. The power is not in repetition for repetition's sake. The power is in who that name represents. I used to speak many names in the dark, titles, spirits, forces, and they responded, but they always demanded more attention, more obedience, more sacrifice. Jesus never demanded, he covered. That's the difference. When you say his name before sleep, you are not inviting manipulation. You are accepting protection. You are placing your most vulnerable hours into hands that heal instead of harm. Some of you listening right now have been fighting battles you don't understand. You've tried relaxing music, white noise, meditations, supplements, distractions, and still the night feels heavy. Still, sleep doesn't restore you. I'm telling you what worked when nothing else did. Say his name, not rushed, not afraid, not desperate, just real. And here's something very important. Don't rush past the moment. After you say it, sit in the silence for a few seconds. Let your body settle. Let your breath slow. Let your spirit recognize the shift. That silence is not empty, it's covered. The first time peace comes, it may feel unfamiliar. That's okay. Some of us lived so long in chaos that calm feels strange. But don't pull away, stay there. Because peace is not the absence of noise, it's the presence of authority. In the next part, I'm going to tell you what happens when you combine this one word with intention. How to recognize when the night is truly changing and why consistency is more important than intensity. There is a reason miracles often begin while we sleep. Stay with me, we're going deeper. By the time you reach this point, the night may already feel different, quieter, safer, or maybe it feels strange, unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. That's okay. Transformation doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives softly, like light slowly filling a dark room you didn't realize was sealed shut. I want to talk to you now about consistency, because this is where most breakthroughs are either completed or abandoned. In the occult, we understood something that many believers underestimate. Repetition creates alignment. Not empty repetition, but intentional return. Night after night, word after word. That's how spiritual patterns are established. That's how access is either reinforced or revoked. When I began saying the name of Jesus before sleep every single night, something subtle but powerful started happening. My nights stopped feeling random. They became anchored, predictable in the best way, safe. And here's what I noticed first. My body began to respond before my mind did. My breathing slowed naturally. My shoulders relaxed. My jaw unclenched. That alone told me something was healing, because the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. You see, trauma doesn't only live in thoughts, it lives in muscle tension, in shallow breathing, in the inability to fully rest. And the night is when the body finally has permission to release what it's been holding all day, but only if it feels safe. Saying the name of Jesus before sleep creates that safety, not because of ritual, but because of relationship. You are not performing, you are resting under authority. Some nights, nothing dramatic happened. No visions, no intense emotions, just rest. And that's important for you to hear. Miracles don't always feel like explosions. Sometimes they feel like normal finally returning. Other nights, I would wake up in the middle of the night, not afraid, but aware, calm, alert, as if something had been removed. As if a weight I didn't know I was carrying had been lifted while I slept. That's how healing often works, quietly, efficiently, without spectacle. Now let me say something very clearly. If you miss a night, don't panic. This is not about perfection, it's about direction. Darkness thrives on guilt. Light invites return. Just come back the next night and speak the name again. What matters is that you are no longer leaving your nights unguarded. Because here's the truth most people never consider. If you don't intentionally place your rest under protection, something else will try to influence it. Not because you're bad, but because spiritual law responds to openness. Sleep opens the soul. That's not poetic language. It's spiritual reality. That's why children are more sensitive at night. That's why nightmares often begin young. That's why fear, first learned in childhood, often resurfaces in the dark. The night is where impressions are formed. So when you say the name of Jesus before sleep, you are reclaiming territory. You are rewriting patterns. You are teaching your spirit a new rhythm. I want you to understand something deeply. This one word doesn't just protect you from bad dreams. It prepares you for what's coming next. Because when your nights are healed, your days follow. I began waking up with ideas I didn't have before, with clarity, with courage, with an ability to say no to things that used to drain me. The fog lifted, not overnight, but steadily. That's what miracles often look like. Not sudden escape, but steady restoration. And the most powerful part? I no longer feared sleep. I looked forward to it, because the night became a place of encounter, not with fear, but with peace. Some of you listening have been afraid of the dark your entire lives, even if you've never admitted it. Not afraid of darkness itself, but of what it brings up. The thoughts, the memories, the anxiety. I want you to try this tonight, not as a test, not as a demand, but as an invitation. When you lay down, turn off the noise, put the phone away, let the room settle, take a breath, And before you close your eyes, speak the name of Jesus. Not loud, not forced, just real. And then rest. If nothing happens tonight, don't stop. If something happens and it feels emotional, don't retreat. If peace comes and it feels unfamiliar, stay there. Because the night is no longer working against you. And here's the final truth I need to leave you with. Darkness doesn't fear sleep. It fears authority spoken in surrender. It fears a soul that no longer tries to control the night, but trusts the one who holds it. I once used words before sleep to invite power that slowly destroyed me. Now I use one word to rest in power that restores me. That word changed my nights. It changed my mind. It changed my life. And it can change yours too. Say tonight, and let the miracles begin.